Hello, everybody. My name is Giordano Dichter. I am working with the SKIM body in the development of the Mediterranean Innovation Partnerships, and I am Managing Director of H&D Partners SRL, which is a company which is operating from Brussels, Belgium, which has the mission to enhance entrepreneurial ecosystems worldwide through the creation and the development and the implementation of a specific methodology that is called the ESVC. Today, we'll look into two specific things for which the technology transfer is absolutely a fundamental component. The first one is to understand really a little bit more about innovation. And the second, which is very important as well and often forgotten by local ecosystems, is how does entrepreneurship really work? How can it happen? And at the end, we will see what is the role of the technology transfer offices for actually supporting the creation of spin-offs and of startups. So the idea of technology transfer usually means actually moving the results of research and development out of the laboratories with practical application. When we're talking about the entrepreneurial world, this means that we are trying to develop new technologies that can be adopted for rendering business processes more efficient. These technologies may be summed up into a new venture, a startup or a spin-off, or may be acquired by existing companies. There is usually, though, a misunderstanding of what innovation is. Therefore, I would like to spend a minute on that. An innovation is a new or improved product or process. A product innovation is a new good that actually differs significantly from the firm's previous goods or services and that has been introduced on the market before. This means that very often product innovations can be either incremental or radical, meaning that they might have already established markets in which to build on, or they might not have markets which are there and that needs to be created and need to be assessed and need to be validated. A process innovation is a new or improved business process that differs significantly from the ones that have been adopted by a company before, and that provides usually better efficiency, lower costs, or a better way of producing goods and services. Therefore, when we talk about innovation and we're talking about their applications, we're talking about implementation. Therefore, when we talk about innovation and practical innovations, we have to look at the practical side of things, of when and how this innovation will actually be used, and if it has a practical, use for companies, individuals, or organizations. These stem, of course, from knowledge creations and the ways to create knowledge is definitely internal through own research and development, which can come, of course, from a company itself or from a university or from a research center, but also through external knowledge, which is the new methods to actually acquire innovative products and innovative solutions through open innovation strategies. When we see the challenge, and the challenge is the transformation of academic research into a source of innovation, which is actually adopted by companies, We're talking of a specific role of universities. During this training, other experienced speakers have spoken much at length to this, but we're seeing in the entrepreneurial world, the academia as a way to get trained people with high skills, and we're even looking at it as a way to find new ideas and innovations through the research that is being developed within the company, within the university. This, of course, creates the possibilities, many possibilities of interactions with companies and with the industrial world, which is extremely important that universities pamper as much as they can. And of course, there is the part of the creation of direct spin-off companies coming from the researchers and the scientists that are actually involved in the research sphere within the academia. Some few figures just to set the scene. This gives an idea of the gross domestic spending on research and development by research institutes, by universities in specific countries. The black line is the OECD median. We can also see that many countries fall below the median. And as we see the gross domestic spending in R&D, for example, in the countries that we're working with within the SKIM project, Morocco, Sudan, and Moldova, these are actually way, way below if they are even measured. As you can see, there's wide gaps in the databases in the major databases of, in this case, the World Bank or the OECD, when it comes to these specific countries. Again, it's important to understand the total per thousands employed of researchers that are involved in research activities and research and development activities. This is specifically in specific companies. And it's interesting to understand what is the context within the entrepreneurship. So until now, we've seen what is the domestic spending and the involvement of researchers in the innovation side. If we consider the entrepreneurial attitude, there are a few indicators that are really interesting to assess. The first one here is the total early stage entrepreneurial activity, which is measured by the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor. We can see, well, this actually measures the percentage of population between 18 and 64 that are either nascent entrepreneurs or owners and managers of new businesses. The numbers for Morocco and Sudan are expressed in the table below the figure. We can see that Sudan, for example, is a very high rate, and this is due mainly because entrepreneurship is not only fostered through the scouting of opportunities through the market, but also because there is a specific needs in specific countries to become entrepreneurial, because there may be no job out there, there may be no other really solution out there. Again, the entrepreneurial intention rate measures the percentage of the population between 18 and 64 who are Latin entrepreneurs and who intend to start a business within 3 years. Again, these are quite high in the countries that we have been working with through the SKIM projects. And this is kind of a hopeful statistics that shows that there is quite a fervent mechanism that goes through around entrepreneurship. Again, another very important thing is the fear of failure rate, which stigmatizes failing entrepreneurs and really impacts the possibility of developing entrepreneurship support programs, because it is embedded in the culture of a specific territory. These are quite high for example, Morocco. In the average, I would say for Sudan. But anyway, it looks at the stigmatization of entrepreneurship and the how people are actually worried about failing a company. And it talks about, of course, risk-taking and risk aversion. I will skip a few slides, and it's important to jump into immediately the context of entrepreneurship here. The definition of what an entrepreneur is actually been changing a lot over the ages. From the definitions of 1725 in the midst of the Industrial Revolution, where an entrepreneur was defined as a person who sets a certain price for a product to resell it, all to viewing entrepreneurs as economic agents, until in 1934, entrepreneurs are associated with innovators, with the work done and the theoretical work done by Joseph Schumpeter. Again, there are many changes, as you can see, in 1948, 1961, up to 1964. Where in economic terms and in pure theoretical terms, the notion of what and the definition of what an entrepreneur is actually changes quite a lot. We have to understand, though, not what has happened throughout the history of definition, but how we can see who is an entrepreneur today. Well, entrepreneurship today is the creation and capture. We define it as the creation and capture of extraordinary value. The entrepreneur creates value and captures that value, but it doesn't define the value. The definition of the value is done by the customers. It's done by the markets. The value becomes extraordinary when there are a lot of people, so a lot of customers who want to buy the product or the services at a price point that makes the whole business profitable. So we see here that when we define entrepreneurship as, or entrepreneur as the person who actually creates and captures values, but it doesn't define the value as the market defines the value. We see here that there is an interaction that is strongly needed between entrepreneur and customers or potential customers and the markets that they want to access. This is why entrepreneurship and the way companies is being created change quite a bit. On one side, yesterday we were talking about the normal way to create a company was actually to create it at the beginning, then to do the planning, the product development, the alpha test, and launch the product. Whereas today we have kind of disrupted this kind of thinking, and the first and everything is about client discovery and client validation. Remember, it's the market or the clients that actually define the value of the entrepreneur and of the product. It's about client generations, and only when all this is validated, you go to create your enterprise. So the old method of business launch actually is something that has changed quite a lot, as we have come to the conclusion that many tools and many processes that were put into place until I would say the early 2010s were actually not compatible with or not efficient enough with the liaison that has to be created between market and entrepreneur. No business plan, for example, survives the first contact with customers, says Steve Blank. And we know exactly that that is true. There are problems with respect to understanding what the customer wants. Usually a researcher coming from a university but any other person who has an innovative idea already thinks that they know what the customer wants and they think they will just buy their products by the million. That is usually not the case. There was a great emphasis on execution, so get the things done, but not really on learning and on getting and on analyzing the feedback and the like. Right now, this gave way to a new process and new ways of creating entrepreneurship and to create companies, which starts exactly by the value propositions, goes into establishing and defining what the customers want, and goes into a process of discovery to understand whether the problem that you as an entrepreneur or a researcher actually trying to solve actually can have that application that is really needed. And then it goes through an iteration process that is continuous until you nail it. It is about making assumptions, of course. It is about making assumptions about the problem, about the product, about the market, about the competition, about the demand. It is about testing the assumptions, about connecting with your companies, asking them the right questions, having ways to verify whether all the features that you have in your innovative product or service are actually useful. It is about creating, of course, the minimum viable product and being able to pivot when your customers and your prospective customers say, no, this is not what we need. We need things to change. We would use this product differently and the like. And it's a cycle that goes on, which encompasses a very high learning curve for the entrepreneurs to ensure that innovations actually have a practical application that will be used by the potential and the potential customers, and that will make their life easier. Again, within this framework, we need to understand the different categories of small business. An article in the Harvard Business Review came up with a very interesting way to define them. These are non-employee, main street supplier businesses or high growth, with a lot of differences, of course, among the others in terms of how they are organized, what they can do, what kind of companies and what kind of markets they go towards, and what kind of growth they can have, what kind of impact they can have on the local communities in terms, for examples of wealth and job creation. But no matter how and what kind of company you're setting up, you will have to go through the entrepreneur's journey, which actually starts from the idea, goes to a startup phase, goes through the growth phase, and through a scale phase. Of course, not all of them reach the scale phase or neither the growth phase. Some of them remain very small businesses. But anyway, there will be a moment where, and a long period where actually costs are greater than revenues, and you will be facing what we call the valley of death. Of course, the more innovative you are, the less you know the markets, the more this will be a riskier part until you reach break-even point where you actually establish yourself as a company which goes into the growth stage. But still, you need to be wary because there are a lot of issues here that are related to the capacity of a company to innovate, and therefore to intake innovation, not only from their research and development departments, but also from from the outside, from universities, from open innovation challenges and the like. This is exactly where, if a company doesn't continue to innovate, so doesn't have a good relations with the innovation actors that are out there, it will start to decrease. It will start to go back down. It will start to have the problems as more innovative companies or more innovative startups and emulators actually come into the market and erode market shares, even of a growth company. The failure of the journey is due to many, many different causes. Here are just some of them pointed out in the various phases of the entrepreneur's journey. But what is important is that ecosystems and support organizations and governments and other ecosystem enabler and players really put in but they need to launch the proper entrepreneurship support value chain, which actually provides a specific services and a specific set of activities to ensure that those failures are minimized or at least mitigated to some extent. The entrepreneurship support value chain, which is an ecosystem view, goes from the outreach, which is responds to the questions, how can we attract people to become entrepreneurs? And this, of course, also in the universities as per se, is a very important question. How can we attract students and researchers to actually start the spin-off part? And then it goes into the pre-start phase, which is all about proving that there is a business, there is a technology, that the concept works, that there is a team ready to, which is solid enough to manage a startup. And once all this is done, once you have gotten proof of everything, it's about launching the operations. It's about helping the companies to access the market, access early stage finance, working on the setup of the operations and the like. Those companies that will survive the valley's test will go into the growth part, and you need a specific set of services to ensure that businesses actually grow organically or scale quickly and do not fall into the innovation trap that I've discussed before. To this end, it's interesting to see what is the deal flow for startup creation. It goes from inquiries to potential entrepreneurs selected, feasibility studies, and startups created. We can easily say by now that 1 out of 10, more or less, companies that actually start the journey will manage to launch a startup, and that more or less 70% of these will be sustainable. So what is the role and where do technology transfer offices fit? It is important to understand the ecosystem as a whole, how it works, because what we're keen to forget is that there is a big difference between the simple and mere existence of institutions that make up an ecosystem and a functioning ecosystems that functions in a way that benefits entrepreneurs. So what we're looking here is that we need to put entrepreneurs at the center of our ecosystem, and we need to make sure that all the entrepreneurship support value chains that we put together respond to the needs of the entrepreneurs in a specific context and in a specific region. Usually and typically, the innovation players in an ecosystem are government, finance, support organizations, for which TTOs are part, and educational organizations and corporates. We rely on education to develop talent, but they can also be a very good source of entrepreneurs through their research activities and through the development of specific entrepreneurship support educational programs within the universities, which actually should be there to help change the mindset. We rely on government for policy initiatives, for tax incentives, for program funding, and for many, many things. But the important thing is that these are still geared towards what the entrepreneur in the local context or regional or national context really need. We rely on support organizations to deliver the support. These are incubators, accelerators, fab labs, maker spaces, prototyping organizations, and of course, technology transfer offices definitely fall into this category. Many things have changed, though, in the support organization history and landscape in the last years, from 1958, where the first business incubator has been established, all the way to 2020. These are just a few milestones that you can read about that has actually brought to the fact that entrepreneurial ecosystems really got a little bit more complicated, and also the way of supporting an entrepreneur through the business support organizations that are part of the ecosystems have actually changed a lot, and it has become quite a crowded marketplace. Incubators are well, we won't talk about incubators, but anyway, we're looking into money and finances as well as an actor of the ecosystem. This is a very important one. We need, and entrepreneurs need money at the different stages of their journey. We're looking into venture and private equity money. We're looking at public support grants, which can be done by the government. We're looking at debt through banks and corporate money and the like. Each one of this, of course, has a different. It's a different element within the system itself. And we've seen in many territories, especially those of the SKIM project, like Moldova, Sudan, that this is something which needs to be heavily worked on to guarantee a seamless flow of services to the entrepreneurs. So the role of technology transfer offices within all this is, of course, the commercialization of research. This is done with industry partnerships. So the role of the technology transfer office to have a specific value proposition for industry is extremely important. The connections have to be there, and the level of interactions with all the SMEs and the corporates in your area must actually absolutely be there. Of course, there's the part of intellectual property, so the licensing part, the patent protection and all that. But one thing that has, it's usually, it's coming up, but it's more recently, but it's quite different from the others, and it's coming in as a new side. It's actually startup incubation. Whereas technology transfer or offices can actually do not need to substitute incubators, but they can work on the mindset and start providing some counseling and coaching to the researchers that are working with them to support actually the launch of spin-offs. The conditions for, of course, for successful spin-offs, and I come back here to the same graph I had before, is, as I said, is the integration with the ecosystem. It's important that TTOs have a very good integration with the industry and with the local business support organizations. And of course, it's about knowledge management. And this is about being able to generate knowledge and disseminate it, not only through the, let's say, the niche of the academic world, but actually to vulgarize it, to disseminate it throughout the ecosystem with a language that is and can be understood by the entrepreneurial communities of the region. This is a way to actually support and define the activities that a technology transfer office can actually run. We're talking of keeping the understanding really the users of the services. So when we define them and understand them, we actually have to understand the key characteristics that they have. And these will be different from region to region, from territory to territory, from university to university. Looking around from around your ecosystem, so opening up to others. We've talked about the necessity to develop strong partnerships with industry, but we need to be able to develop strong partnerships also with the business support organizations that are out there, and also with the financial communities and the like. This is a very delicate part. And then, of course, from all this, it is about developing a streamlined set of services that will help your prospective users to delve into the entrepreneur's journey by mitigating the risks associated to the journey itself. With this, I am finished, and I thank you very much for your kindest attention. Would you want to contact me? These are my details. Thank you very much.